Hey everyone, welcome back. Really glad to have all of you here. Today we are going to study about Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who was born in 1820 and died in 1891. He is remembered as the father of modern Bengali prose and as one of the most iconic figures of the Bengal Renaissance. The Bengal Renaissance was essentially a 19th century intellectual and social awakening centered in Bengal that laid the groundwork for the broader Indian nationalist movement. Vidyasagar was at the heart of it. Let us understand him fully today. This slide gives us the two identities that defined Vidyasagar across his lifetime, and both are worth knowing for prelims. The first title is Vidyasagar, which translates to Ocean of Knowledge. This title reflects his extraordinary mastery of both Sanskrit and English. He was a brilliant scholar who excelled in classical learning while simultaneously engaging with Western thought. He was also a prolific 19th century educationist and writer. The second title is Dayar Sagar, which translates to Ocean of Kindness. This was not just a poetic name. It captured something real about his character. He was a compassionate social reformer who spent his entire life championing the cause of those who had been pushed to the margins of society, whether women, lower caste students, or tribal communities. So when you see the name Vidyasagar in a question, remember he was both the scholar and the reformer. These two identities were inseparable. The biographical details in this slide are directly testable in prelims, so let us log them in carefully. Vidyasagar was born on 26 September 1820. The place was Birsingha village in Midnapore district of the Bengal Presidency, which is in present-day West Bengal. The date and the village name are both frequently tested. Now the context of his early life is important. He grew up in conditions of extreme poverty. His family had very little. Yet, he pursued education with extraordinary dedication. Despite these financial hardships, he achieved profound mastery in both Sanskrit and English, which was an exceptional combination for the time. Sanskrit represented the classical Hindu intellectual tradition, and English represented the language of colonial power and Western learning. Vidyasagar bridged both worlds with equal fluency. This background of poverty followed by exceptional achievement is itself significant. His story demonstrated that merit and learning could transcend the rigid barriers of birth and circumstance, which was a radical idea in 19th century colonial India. This slide traces his professional career in 3 steps, and each milestone has a specific date that prelims can test. In 1839, he cleared the law examination. This is often overlooked, but it shows the breadth of his intellectual range. He was not just a Sanskrit scholar. He engaged with modern legal education as well. In 1841, he was appointed head of the Sanskrit department at Fort William College in Calcutta. Fort William College was a very prestigious colonial institution. Being appointed to lead its Sanskrit department at barely 21 years of age was an extraordinary recognition of his scholarly abilities. Then, from 1851 to 1858, he served as principal of Sanskrit College in Calcutta. This is his most important professional role and the one most frequently tested. As principal, he did not simply teach Sanskrit. He fundamentally transformed the institution, opening its doors to lower caste students and using his position as a platform for broader social change. We will come back to that in detail shortly. This slide gives us the framework for understanding Vidyasagar's overall contribution to India, and it maps neatly onto what UPSC looks for when asking about the Bengal Renaissance or 19th century social reform. The 4 pillars are social reforms, women's education, cultural nationalism, and empowerment of the marginalized. Each of these connects to specific actions, legislations, or institutions. The next several slides go into each of these in detail, but keep this four-part framework in mind as the organizing structure of his legacy. This is the social reform pillar, and it contains some of the most directly examinable content in this entire session. The first and most significant reform was on widowhood. Vidyasagar led a sustained campaign to allow Hindu widows to remarry. This was a deeply controversial cause at the time because Orthodox Hindu society considered widow remarriage to be a violation of religious law. Vidyasagar countered this by going back to the original Sanskrit scriptures and demonstrating from the texts themselves that there was no authentic scriptural prohibition on widow remarriage. He used the language of traditional scholarship to defeat traditionalist arguments. His campaign ultimately succeeded and culminated in the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, which was passed by the British colonial government. This act is one of the landmark social legislations of 19th century India and is absolutely essential for prelims. The second issue was child marriage. Vidyasagar campaigned fiercely for its complete abolition. While a law was not passed in his lifetime on this specific issue, his advocacy contributed to the broader reform conversation that eventually led to later legislation. The third issue was polygamy, specifically the practice of Kulin Brahmins who married multiple women. Vidyasagar fought to impose severe restrictions on this practice. He documented its devastating effects on the women involved and used public pressure and petitions to push for legislative action. This slide covers two education-related reforms, one on gender and one on caste. On the gender side, Vidyasagar opened higher education to women at a time when this was met with fierce orthodox opposition. He founded several girls' schools across Bengal, essentially building from scratch an institutional infrastructure for women's education that had not existed before. He worked closely with John Eliot Drinkwater Bethune, a colonial administrator, in supporting what became Bethune School in Calcutta, one of the first institutions of formal education for women in India. On the caste side, when he became principal of Sanskrit College, he took the radical step of opening the college's doors to lower caste and non-Brahmin students. Historically, Sanskrit learning had been a monopoly of the Brahmin community. By breaking open that monopoly, Vidyasagar challenged one of the most entrenched hierarchies in Indian society and made knowledge accessible across caste lines. Both of these actions were courageous in the context of 19th century Bengal. He faced significant personal backlash but did not retreat. This slide covers what we call the cultural nationalism pillar of his contribution. The most tangible outcome here is a book called Borno Porichoy, which means Introduction to Letters. He authored this in 1855, and it served as the primary Bengali alphabet primer, a foundational textbook for learning the Bengali script. Remarkably, it is still in use today, which makes it one of the longest surviving educational texts in Indian history. But beyond the book itself, Vidyasagar's deeper contribution was to modernize the Bengali language and its prose format. Before him, written Bengali was heavily Sanskritized and inaccessible to ordinary people. He simplified and standardized it, making the language more accessible across class and education levels. Why does this matter for nationalism? Because a shared language creates a shared identity. When Bengalis from different backgrounds could read and write in a common, accessible prose style, it created the conditions for a shared cultural consciousness. That shared consciousness was a vital precursor to the broader nationalist awakening that gathered pace later in the 19th and early 20th centuries. In this sense, Vidyasagar's literary work was also a political act. This is one of the most moving and frequently overlooked aspects of Vidyasagar's life. and it is increasingly being tested in prelims because it speaks directly to tribal welfare and grassroots development. In his later years, Vidyasagar left Calcutta and relocated to a place called Karmatanar, which is in present-day Jamtara district of Jharkhand. He went there specifically to live among the Santhal tribal community, one of the most marginalized groups in colonial India. This was not a symbolic visit. He actually lived there for an extended period. During his time at Karmatanar, he established grassroots schools to make education accessible to Santhal children, founded adult literacy centers for elders who had never had access to formal learning, and opened free medical clinics to address the health needs of the community. This phase of his life is significant because it shows that his concern for the marginalized was not theoretical. He physically relocated himself to work alongside the people he wanted to uplift. That is a rare form of commitment that UPSC examiners have noted in questions. This slide consolidates the three major institutional associations of Vidyasagar during the Bengal Renaissance. The first is Sanskrit College, Calcutta, where he served as principal from 1851 to 1858. This is his primary institutional identity, and it was from this position that he expanded access to both lower caste students and pushed for women's education in the broader region. The second is Bethune School, Calcutta. He was a key supporter and was highly instrumental in expanding girls' education through this institution. Bethune School, named after J.E.D. Bethune, was a pioneering institution for women's education in colonial India. The third is his active leadership of student societies and educational initiatives during the Bengal Renaissance. These were grassroots movements for expanding education at the community level. This slide positions Vidyasagar within the broader chain of Indian social reform and is very useful for mains context as well as prelims. The chain has three links. First is Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who laid the foundation. Ram Mohan Roy founded the Brahmo Samaj, campaigned against sati, and initiated the process of rationalizing and reforming Hinduism through the use of reason and scripture. He was the pioneer. Second is Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, who is identified here as the acceleration. He took the reform impulse forward with greater urgency and specificity, focusing on widow remarriage, women's education, caste barriers in learning, and vernacular cultural identity. Third is the continuation, represented by the reform campaigns of the Brahmo Samaj after Vidyasagar. His work directly inspired subsequent reformers and movements. Figures like Keshab Chandra Sen and Debendranath Tagore carried the reform tradition forward within the Brahmo Samaj framework. Understanding Vidyasagar as the connecting link between Ram Mohan Roy's foundational work and the later reform movements gives you the big picture of 19th century Indian intellectual history. This is your final high-yield revision slide, and every item on it is directly examinable. Birthplace and year: Birsingha village, Midnapore district, 1820. His two titles: Vidyasagar, meaning ocean of knowledge, and Dayar Sagar, meaning ocean of kindness. His most important professional role: Principal of Sanskrit College, Calcutta, from 1851 to 1858. His most important literary contribution: Borno Porichoy in 1855, the Bengali alphabet primer still in use today. His most important legislative contribution: the Hindu Widow Remarriage Act of 1856, which was the direct outcome of his sustained campaign. His final humanitarian commitment: Santhal tribal upliftment work at Karmatandr, now in Jamtara district of Jharkhand. If you can recall all 6 of these cleanly, you are fully prepared for any prelims question on Vidyasagar. And with that, we wrap up today's session. Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar is one of those figures whose life teaches you not just history, but values. the courage to challenge injustice, the discipline to master knowledge, and the humility to serve those at the bottom. Keep that in mind when you revise him. Thank you so much for being here. Keep up the consistent effort with your preparation, and I will see you in the next session. All the best.